Let me ask you something. Are you sitting with a big chunk of cash in your bank account right now, staring at you? You're staring at it, and it's that awkward silence where you don't know what to do. Well, a lot of people are. And the reason that they're doing that is that there's a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace right now. And that uncertainty has put a pause on a lot of people's actions. So to get to the bottom of what's going on in the marketplace, we created a free webinar where I had 3 elite, savvy, sophisticated real estate entrepreneurs come as panelists to answer the question of should we be investing in real estate deals right now. You can get access to that webinar for free at cfcmentorshipprogram.com/doing deals. Look, we all know that real estate has created more millionaires than pretty much any other business. The problem is, it's also created a lot of heartaches and bankruptcies. Sure, we can get access to a ton of real estate education on the internet, but that's precisely the problem. How can we tell which strategies will consistently produce asymmetric returns and which should be avoided at all costs? My goal is to give real estate entrepreneurs, capital raisers, and investors all of the secrets so that we can grow our portfolios without dealing with costly investment nightmares. And that's what this program is all about. I'm Hunter Thompson, and welcome to the Cashflow Connections Real Estate Podcast. Welcome back to the Cashflow Connections Real Estate Podcast. Today, it is all about the single most lucrative skill in the world of entrepreneurship, which is multiplying your time by hiring a team. So we're going to discuss it all today, starting off with how to find out when you need to hire someone. When does it make sense to actually make that investment of time and money into bringing in your first or next team member? We're also talk about all the apps and software and tips and hacks that our guest uses to streamline the onboarding process as quickly as possible. It is very important that this process is done correctly so that once the system's in place, you can just let them go. And unfortunately, the other side of hiring a team is letting team members go. It's a very important skill as well because you cannot scale unless everyone is on the same page and demands excellence of themselves and their contemporaries, their peers in the business. So how to let people go and ensure that you're positioning it in such a way that they can go on and achieve more and demand a higher level of excellence for themselves at their next job. So hope you enjoyed the conversation. Of course, we are all very excited about what's coming up, our first ever 100% virtual conference, which is the Intelligent Investors Real Estate Conference. If you know anything about the show, we have been real excited with the level of caliber of speakers that we've been able to bring on this program, and we're doubling down for this year at IREC. So if you're interested in checking out tickets, go to iirec2021.com. We're about to launch the speakers. If we haven't heard of them already, some of the most well-known, proficient, successful real estate managers, sponsors, accountants, attorneys in the business. Very, very proud with the caliber of speakers. And it's not just people that may be quasi-celebrities in the real estate space, but maybe a lot of people that you've never heard of, but own $1 billion worth of real estate. There's a lot of that in the sector. So hope to see you there. Again, iirec2021.com. Make sure to grab a ticket as quickly as possible because we're constantly increasing the price as it gets closer and closer to the event in January. All right. Hope you enjoy the episode. How's it going, everyone? Our guest for today is Dan Handford, who is one of the managing partners with PassiveInvesting.com, where they have acquired nearly $360 million of assets. Dan is also the founder of Multifamily Investor Nation, where he provides free multifamily education to a nationwide group of over 31,000 members. And the group has more than 50 meetups across the UK, Canada, and the United States. He's also the host of a popular podcast in iTunes, which is Multifamily Investor Nation. So make sure to check that out. Now, we obviously have had Dan on the program before, talk about investing and such, but today we're going to talk about a topic that I wanted to have him on because Dan has got his hands involved in a lot of different things. His background is interesting. I think a lot of people get a lot out of that story, but most importantly, when I interact with Dan, I interact with his team, I can tell that it's not just Dan working 100 hours a day. He has been able to multiply his time by creating an infrastructure and team members that are poised to work with maximum efficiency. So I really like that. I'm a big productivity nut. So I wanted to have Dan talk about the ultimate productivity hack, which is really building out a team. So Dan, thanks again for coming on.
Hunter, glad to be here once again. Looking forward to sharing with your audience.
So I want to start this story with your background because I know from a previous conversation that we had that this team building thing did not start with your real estate career. So walk us through where you came from, and then we'll talk about real estate in a minute.
Sure. I just switched microphones, so this one sounds a little bit better than the last one.
Much better. Now you're good to go.
Awesome. So my background's actually in chiropractic. So I'm a chiropractor by trade and started my very first true successful business while I was in chiropractic college. It's a business that I still have today. It's actually called shopanatomical.com. And we sell all types of anatomy models like skeletons and skulls and brains and hearts and spine models and all kinds of plastic models that, doctors and, education in the educational realm, but also like doctors' offices and pharmaceutical sales reps, they actually utilize these. And I started it in chiropractic college because everybody needed a spine model to be able to learn how to, adjust and analyze the human vertebral system, if you will. And so was able to start that business while trying to find a need of the students, finding that the bookstore was selling it, at a higher price than what they really should have been selling it for. And so I was able to go in and find the manufacturer and sell the spine model to the students and start my very first successful business. And so that's where my first kind of foray into a true successful business. I had dabbled into a few things always in, when I was growing up, trying to sell, various things, door to door and trying to, I used to mow lawns and, the lemonade stands and selling candy and things like that. And even in high school, I actually worked and sold some Cutco, if you will. I know a lot of people that have actually done that over the years too. But when I got out of chiropractic college, I started out right away, started out my first chiropractic clinic. And about a year and a half to 2 years in, I really had a light bulb moment come on where I realized that even though I owned my own clinic, I was still in a job because I could only see so many patients in a day. So I was capping my income and I could only see patients while I was in the office. So if I wanted to go on a vacation for a week, I still had to pay my staff, still had to pay all my overhead, but I saw no patients. So I actually was losing money and paying to go on vacation. And so I quickly decided that I really wanted to hire on some other people that can do some of the work that I was doing so I can step out. And so that was my first time of really getting to the point of stepping out of that role and being able to focus on the growth aspect of the business. And then a few years later, it started to integrate medicine into our chiropractic clinic. So I started to hire on some medical doctors and nurse practitioners. And, fast forward to today, we actually don't do any chiropractic in our clinics. We do all medical services in what's called non-surgical orthopedics and sports medicine. We also do a lot of regenerative medicine like prolotherapy, PRP, and stem cell treatments for orthopedic conditions. And the revenue and the cash flow that we were making off of that, when I say we, my wife and I, we started to pay large six-figure checks to the government. And so we were working all year long and then writing these large checks to the government. And I knew there had to be something that we could do to be able to reduce that taxable liability because I'd heard people, investing in real estate. And so started to dabble into to get myself educated in the real estate realm and trying to find ways to offset that income. And it's now been coming up on our fourth year of not focusing on working in our businesses at all for our clinics. And we're full on in the real estate. And, obviously I still treat passiveinvesting.com, our syndication company, as a business because I truly feel like in order to be successful, you have to treat it that way. And so we do treat it as a business. We have a team that we're building out. And that's some of the topic of today is talking about what did we do, not just in our real estate side of things, but even in our clinics in the very beginning as we started to grow and as we started to scale and being able to hire people to be able to help us, whether it be a virtual assistant or even an assistant in the office as well.
Yeah, that's right. And you still own that medical-based business, correct?
I do.
Yeah, that's a really key point here because you're obviously heavily involved in real estate and multiple different sectors in terms of different things that you're doing. You have a conference, you have a podcast, and you have these events that take place and webinars and such. So it takes a team to be able to do that. Plus, you have another business that's basically running, self-sustaining without requiring much of your time. So really powerful there. So let's talk about this, right? So first of all, before we get started with how to, what about when to? when do you start to know, okay, it's time for me to invest in bringing on an additional team member? What's the point where it starts to make sense economically to do so, whether it be part-time or full-time?
Sure. So I actually just had a person in my office just a few minutes ago. I went to lunch. Somebody actually drove down from DC to have lunch with me today. And I was in my office here talking about this very topic about, when is that right time? And I personally like to do most of the tasks that I delegate first. Like I want to know how to do them all. And, one of the biggest roadblocks I had when I tried to start doing a lot of this delegation is I'm a true entrepreneur. I'm a true business owner where I feel like I can do everything better than everybody else. And it's a mindset block that I have. And I have to constantly, every day, tell myself that, right? And it's not anything I think I can ever fix or cure or anything like that. It's a constant battle that I have. But earlier on, I have realized that was a mind block that I had. And I had to tell myself that if I could hire somebody, though, and they could do it 80 to 85% as well as I could do it, then I could delegate it to them. And even though they're not doing it as well as I can do it, I am now able to focus on where my biggest strengths are, which for me is the growth aspect and the vision aspect of the business and kind of moving on to that next thing to continue to grow. And the moment I started to tell myself that is when I was able to really start to delegate things and hire people. And some of the mistakes that I made in the very beginning is that I started to hire people that were the cheapest people, right? I don't want to say like the person themselves, but their skill set wasn't as good as I wanted it to. And of course, when you have somebody that you're hiring that skill sets aren't as good or they don't have as much experience, you're not going to pay them as much. And so nowadays, though, fast forward to today, I look for people that are high caliber people that I can pay really well and that they can do what they're really good at. And it allows us to be able to get where we're going faster. And so for me, that the question here is about at what point do you know you need somebody? Whenever I get to the point of, I'll give you an example right now, Hunter. We're actually, right now, we're in the process of hiring a investor relations consultant. And this investor relations consultant is going to take a lot off of my plate because they're going to be doing a lot of our inbound or our onboarding of investor calls we have on a regular basis because I know right now that I can't do it as well as somebody else could if that's all they were doing full time. And it's worth it to me to be able to hire somebody to do that because now I can focus on the continued growth and vision aspect and strategic objectives of our company. And like right now on our website, on a low month, we'll get between about 80 to 100 new leads off of our website every single month from investors. That's straight from the passiveinvesting.com website. And on a really good month, we're seeing like even in the last couple of months, we've seen upwards to 160, 170, 180 new investor leads coming through our website. I don't have the time to be able to diligently follow up with each one of those people if they decide not to schedule an appointment on our calendar. But I'm the one doing all those phone calls. So now I'm to the point where I'm hiring somebody else because I can now focus on what I'm really good at, and then they can focus on and do a much better job of actually all their focus and their mindset. Their mind is focused on, reaching out to the investors, building those relationships, and making sure that the investors feel comfortable when they're investing with us.
Yeah, I really like that. And I'll add some context there because I think that example is actually a perfect one. There's so many people in this industry that are discussing how to outsource those initial calls. They're incredibly important calls to have.
It's the lifeblood.
That's right. You don't want to blow it, but you also don't want to spend your whole career doing those calls, saying the same thing over and over again. So that's important. I'll also add some context there. If you're not to the point where you're getting 100 leads per month, which is an incredible accomplishment, I would say the time to start outsourcing some of your tasks is now if you haven't started, right? If you haven't outsourced a graphic design task or outsourced a website development or outsourced data entry, you should do that like today. The fact that you're listening to this podcast shows me you've got some skills that are potentially lucrative. So there's people that you can hire for somewhere between $10, $20, $50, $100 an hour, where you're still net positive because your skill set is very lucrative. So I actually want to circle back regarding the bang for your buck. What to you is considered cheap when you were saying, well, you can't go that low because you don't really get a lot out of it? And then where would you see a lot of bang for your buck in terms of dollars per hour or annual salary, however you're calculating it?
Sure. I mean, I think it depends on the position. I mean, this position that we're hiring for is a six-figure a year position.
Yeah.
So this is a high caliber person, and it's kind of a unicorn type person, Hunter. I mean, and I think you know what I'm talking about, where you can't just hire anybody for this position. It needs to be somebody that has great personal skills. They have an ability to carry on a conversation and then break things down and explain them to people. And they also have the ability to really underwrite, right? I mean, they're not going to be underwriting on a regular basis, but they have to know all the nuances of underwriting in order to answer investor questions properly. And then they have to be able to know how to, I don't want to say sell, but I mean, that's an aspect of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not a hard sell, it's more of an educational sell, but they have to be able to carry on those conversations that makes our group look competent. And so it's not just going to be a, $30,000-$40,000 a year position. This is a position that is like I said earlier, it's the lifeblood of the business. So you have to have two things when it comes to syndication. You have to have deal flow and you have to have investors. Either one of those, if you don't have a syndication business. Deal flow is usually fairly easy to get because you can just start to build up relationships with more brokers. And, obviously we have one of our managing partners. That's all he does is he focuses on those broker relationships and finding the deal flow. Well, my responsibility is on the investor relations piece and finding more investors. So we have to make sure we bring in these new investors. But this type of a phone call, this initial phone call with an investor is the initial first impression of your entire group with that investor. And if it doesn't go well, you lose that investor. And that investor has the perception of your entire group based on that one phone call. And so it's not that they just have that one impression of that one person at your group. It's the whole group. That person literally sets the tone and the standard for that entire group.
Yeah. I like that. So let's walk through the process. How have you gone about this, particularly for this situation, but also generally, how do you decide, okay, I need this task, I have to do it, I'm not spending my time doing this anymore. How do you decide where you're going to go to source that individual? Do you use websites like Upwork, for example, or do you have some other funnel?
So if I'm looking for I say virtual, but this person I'm going to be hiring is likely going to be virtual, meaning that they're going to be working remotely. So they're not like in a different country. They're still here in the States. But in general, if I'm looking for somebody that has a smaller task, if I just need somebody to help with a few graphics or something like that, then absolutely, I'm going to use a resource like Upwork.com. I've used them many times. I even use them now for some not simple, but some more complex website tasks. Most of the simple stuff we can do internally, but when it comes to some complex things, I have some on contract Upwork freelancers that work all over the world for us. And but if it's a task like this, then we're going to use something like Indeed or LinkedIn and the person that I'm potentially going to be hiring for this, I have them in my head. I haven't made an official offer yet. They actually found us on LinkedIn. And it wasn't a LinkedIn job or anything like that. It was me actually posting on LinkedIn that we were looking for this hire. And they saw it on our post and, had people reach out to us. And, we've had dozens of people reach out to us that are people who have already invested with us and people who are connected with us. And most of the people have been following us for a while now, and they just really like our group. And so it's good for me because if I'm just hiring somebody off of Indeed who has no clue who we are, now they have to learn about us a lot. They have to know, they're starting from square zero, right? Or square one. Whereas hiring somebody that already knows you like that, then they have it's a lot easier to be able to make that transition. Plus they already know about your reputation in the industry and things like that, so they can speak to that as well. But when it comes to where to find these people, I mean, obviously, if it's a simple tasks that need to be taken off your plate, Upwork.com, or I've used them. They actually used to be another company that we used to work. I think it was onlinejobs.ph. I think is another one. It's jobs that you're posting for people out in the Philippines. And then we use Indeed and LinkedIn primarily for finding positions like this. Now, when we hired our asset manager, we have a full-time director of asset management. When we hired him, we actually found him on a commercial real estate website for jobs, which is actually called selectleaders.com. And selectleaders.com is really just for people in the commercial real estate industry, whether you're trying to find a good underwriter, or you're trying to find a good analyst, or somebody who's really good at acquisitions or finance. I mean, that's even attorneys are on there. You can find a lot of things that are CRE related on that website for people who are looking for jobs.
Excellent. Now, let's hear how this works, right? Because I think a lot of people say, okay, we went out, we tried to find someone, we tried and tried and tried our little hearts out, but we don't really know what they did in terms of output. We don't know how many they did in terms of how many people they interviewed. What does the funnel look like? You sent out a post on LinkedIn that said, if you're interested, shoot us a comment, shoot us a personal message. What takes place from there? Because I know that you've probably dialed it in. If you've received 20 leads, for example, what's the next step?
Sure. So I will admit that I am not the person that does all of the hiring process here. So I have a person on my team that does that in our kind of HR department, if you will.
That's a really important takeaway. I mean, that's the whole thing. If you're going to be able to find the best in class, it's going to take some volume. If you're going to be doing volume, perhaps you should outsource it. So I'll let you finish, but I just wanted to make sure people understood that.
Sure. No, I mean, I probably should have hired for this position 6 months ago, but I was trying to do it all myself.
Yep.
So I eventually was like, you know what? I just need to delegate this to somebody on my team and have them do it for me. And it got done, right? And that's usually how things work. But so we actually have them, we put very specific instructions on the job post so that they actually know exactly what is expected of them to be able to apply for the job. So we make sure they have a cover letter on there. We'll usually have them answer a couple of questions so that we know that they actually read the job post, not just like clicking a button to apply for the job. And then one other layer, after we review their resume, if we really want to potentially bring them to the next level, we actually send them a series of tests, not a series of tests, but it's one test called the Wonderlic test. And I'm not sure if any of you have heard of that before, but it's WONDERLIC, the Wonderlic test. And it actually tests each one of the candidates on cognitive, personality, and motivation. And they will tell you how well matched that person is with that particular position. And they'll score all of your candidates. And we don't use this as like an end all be all, like this is how we make our decisions on hiring, but it gives us another tool like the resume to be able to see who this person could potentially be and how well matched they are with the actual position. And so that testing software is not that expensive. I'm not sure exactly how much we pay for it, but I think it might be like $100 or $200, a month that we pay, and you can do unlimited applicants in there. So we can send them through that test and kind of give a score as to how well matched they are with that particular position. And then once we review the scores and once we review the resume, then we'll bring them to the next level, which is the actual virtual interview. So usually it's usually via Zoom. If they're locally, we'll usually meet them in person. But right now in the COVID era, we've been doing everything virtually. So we'll do our interview with them virtually. And then on that virtual phone call, we have a series of questions that we'll ask them about the particular position that we're hiring for and experience levels and things like that. And that's kind of the process that we take them through. And then once we have those interviews, I'm usually on those interviews with the person that's helping us, and we sit down afterwards and go, all right, so what did you think? And we kind of go through the pros and the cons of each person and then make a decision. So we don't usually sit on it and, wait a week or 2 or 3 to be able to make a decision. Usually it's, a pretty quick decision that we can tell from the things that we have them go through as to which one would be the best fit for us.
Excellent. Okay, so you're in the process of hiring this key individual. Let's take a step back to maybe some hires that you previously had and now kind of managing those teams. They've gone through that whole process. They've gone through the interview. They got the job. They've made it, baby. They made the red panties night. They get to go and work for passiveinvesting.com. So what happens next? How do you manage these team members? How do you onboard them? How do you teach them? How do you coach them? And how do you set accountability for them going forward?
So we actually make sure that especially if it's somebody who's working overseas and they're in that virtual assistant position, what we're doing, we have certain tasks that they are going to be doing on a regular basis. And we actually have each one of those tasks that are, in a kind of standard operating procedure manual or whatever. So they know exactly how to do them and what they're supposed to be doing. They can always follow back up with those. And there's actually a website that I stumbled upon recently called Flowster.app, A-P-P, Flowster.app. And it's a software that is a kind of have workflow software for people that have virtual assistants, right? And you can put in there, how to, what to do with a podcast episode when you're done with it. And you can lay out there step by step what each person is supposed to do. And you can actually assign those tasks to different people on your team. So as they're going through a particular podcast episode, if your audio editor has to do one thing, and then your graphic person has to do something else, and then the person who's pushing it on the social media is something else, and one person doing the website, it can all be on there and connect everybody. We have not implemented it yet, but I saw this recently at an event that I was at in Austin, Texas, just this past weekend. I met the founder of the company there, and he was doing a talk on it, and I was like, that is actually a great software for people to be able to utilize to be able to help train some virtual people that are that are not in the office. And even people that are in the office, it's good for those people too, right? Because you now have this workflow that everybody is familiar with, and nobody can change the workflow unless they get approval, right? So a lot of times when you set a certain process in place, people can go in there and change it, and then 6 months later, it's not even doing the same thing you wanted it to do. But this software keeps it in line and in task to be able to do that. So giving them very specific tasks of, hey, this is exactly what we expect of you. You need to be doing this on a weekly basis or this on a daily basis, and this is what I want to see, and this is what I want to have done, and giving them timeframes and targets. And that's one of the reasons why I like doing a lot of these things myself first, because if they tell me, it's going to take me longer than an hour to get that done, if I've done it in 20 minutes before, I can call them on that, right? Because I know it doesn't take an hour to edit a podcast episode, right? So there are certain things like that help from a time perspective, that if you could do it yourself first in the beginning, number one, it helps you be able to create these standard operating procedures or these kind of tasks that have to be done. And it also allows you to know kind of the expected time frame of completion of these tasks as well.
Yeah, really like that. An app I've been using recently, Cloud App, or Loom, is kind of a competitor where you can screen record yourself with one click and then instantly upload it to the cloud, and it automatically copies a link to the upload so you can paste it instantly. Now, previously, I used to show team members how to complete certain tasks by going to QuickTime, recording myself doing it, creating a folder, putting the video in Dropbox, uploading a Dropbox, waiting a little bit, copying the link, blah, blah, blah. It's like it still saved me 5 minutes a day, probably 15 times a day, but that's hard to come by. I mean, 5 minutes is hard to come by of actual work. So those types of hacks and tips and software products are really critical. And I think that space is going to get really interesting over the next couple of years, given what's been going on with COVID and remote working. So big fan of all that.
And one key thing I would mention here as well is, when I stepped out of managing the clinics full time, one of the things that I did, my wife and I, we actually still wanted to be the people that trained our staff, but we didn't want to have to be there. And so we actually use a software that we have, we actually call it our university for our clinics. And it's actually called Lightspeed VT. And it's a video training platform, very similar to what you're talking about. And we put it into like an educational format, and there's different modules and things like that, but it's just for our team members. We probably did 200 or 300 videos doing that. But when we did it, I purposely made sure that they were small, short clips, 3 to 5 minutes tops, of every little thing that we could think of that needed to be done and needed to be trained on. Because most people, 3 to 5 minutes is the most they can absorb at any given time. And if for some reason something changes 3 months, 6 months, a year down the road, you don't have to re-record a 30 or an hour-long video. You just re-record that one little segment that changed, and you don't have to change everything, the whole process, right? And so when you're doing those steps, even for the virtual assistants, because I've done just what you're saying, Hunter, where I've pressed record on the buttons and put it into a Dropbox folder and sent it over to a VA and had them watch it and things like that. But even when you do that, you should break them down into smaller steps so they can actually walk through them in different steps like that as well.
Yeah, really like that. I mean, look, generally speaking, 3 to 5 minutes, 1 to 3 minutes, somewhere in that range, the attention span of most people, myself included, is going to be limited to that anyway. So going longer than that's just a little bit grueling. So, okay, so you got the remote team. They're learning, they're being onboarded a lot by video content of you actually doing it, which helps a lot. But in terms of managing that from that point forward, so they have the skill set, they're actually implementing it, but how do you create some accountability to ensure that they're doing it correctly on an ongoing basis, and that they have some transparency to their own work, but also that you have transparency into that work?
Well, for the most part, I'm very close to most of the people that are assisting me, and so I'm going to know whether or not they're actually doing what they need to be doing. So if I finish up a podcast episode and notify them that it's ready in the Zoom platform to be able to download it and do what they need to do with it, I'm going to know whether or not they're actually completing those tasks. So I don't necessarily have any like hard, examples of, hey, once you get that done, fill out this form, let me know, or give me some time frames, or
because you could see it.
Any type of spreadsheets to kind of manage their time or anything. But most of mine are close enough to me that I have a really good handle on how fast they're getting things done, how efficiently they are. One thing that we did do recently is we implemented, I say recently, it's been a year now. Last year around this time, we actually implemented the full Microsoft Teams platform for all of our team members. And so we're all able to look on our teams and see who's active on their computers at any given time and be able to communicate with them, whether it be via the Microsoft Voice or via setting up meetings or being able to chat with them back and forth. And it allows us to be able to stay connected as much as we can. And we can see if somebody is actually doing things the way they're supposed to or if they're not, right? So it allows us to have an extra pulse on our team. And it also, with Microsoft Teams, it eliminated our need for Dropbox because we now have Microsoft OneDrive. So we combined really kind of three things in one where we don't have to have Zoom anymore because we can use the Microsoft Teams meetings. We don't have to need Dropbox because we have Microsoft OneDrive. And then it also allowed us to have all of our email integrated into Microsoft Teams, as well as our calendars and our office products are all part of that as well. So for like one monthly fee, it's all of that included in there, and it eliminated a lot of other different things.
Yeah, like that. There's a book I've mentioned several times in this podcast, despite never reading it, but the title alone has helped me tremendously, which is Measure What Matters. If you have a team and they don't have a good sense of the tasks which are outside of their purview, it could negatively impact your business because there's not that sense of morale. So one of the things that I've done is say, look, first of all, the podcast download numbers are critical to the business. Now, my members of my team, they're not responsible directly for how good the quality of the content is, how many people share the podcast, how many people review the podcast, et cetera. But they need to know this is a key performance indicator. This number goes up and to the right, odds are the business is going to do well. Something else that they may not be directly involved in is number of dollars invested. So every Monday, we have a very robust Google sheet that my assistant creates that has number of podcast downloads, number of dollars invested, number of LinkedIn posts, number of LinkedIn comments, number of likes on Facebook. It's just like a very good, transparent look at the totality of the business. And we all know we're on the same page. These are the things that matter. Keep pushing hard and the company's going to grow. Even if they're not directly related to that, it's a good feeling to see the chart go up and to the right. So definitely like that, because human beings are designed to like gamification. If you give them a task and say, look, this is where you should be, whatever it is, 5x per month, they want to push it, right? They want to get to 6, they want to get to 7. And if they don't, they likely shouldn't be on your team, which is a good segue into kind of the next part of this conversation. When things aren't working, when they're not hitting their key performance indicators, when the podcasts aren't getting posted on Wednesday at 11 a.m., what does that look like? How do you go about those conversations? And if it gets to the point where you have to let someone go, how does the conversation go?
Sure. Well, I will tell you this, that on my team will tell you this, I'm a very direct person. So in my workings, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm going to tell you like it is. So if we have had this happen once before on one of our virtual assistants. Thankfully, we haven't had it happen very often, but one of our virtual assistants were not performing. And I basically told them, listen, this is what we expect. This is what's not happening. We need to try to, correct this. And obviously they know that if they don't correct it, then they're not going to be my virtual assistant for very long. And so same thing, they had to have that conversation with them. And again, we waited a couple of weeks and still was not having any success with getting them to, perform like they should be performing. And so the conversation that I learned early on in my business career was actually from a mentor of mine. He actually told me, he said, you should never be afraid of firing somebody, and especially for lack of performance, right? And he said, the reason why is because you are actually doing them a disservice by not firing them, because you are actually holding that person back from reaching their full potential. he said, that's the conversation you have to have with somebody when they're not performing well. And that's basically what I'll tell them. Like, if it's you, let's just pretend it's you, Hunter. I was like, well, Hunter, I know you've been working with us for a few months now or a year or whatever. And things lately have just, as you know, have not been, going as well as we had hoped. And I feel like right now we are holding you back from reaching your full potential. So we've decided to let you go so you can go and try to find the thing that's best for you.
It's pretty powerful. And what's surprising, it sounds like it's BS. It sounds, oh yeah, sure, you care about me, whatever. But if you've ever been let go from a job or had to do this with someone, that person will look back in 10 years and be grateful because they are going to succeed. They are going to grow. I had a friend of mine, USC grad, at USC in sorority scene, kind of the party girl, and struggled to get the job that she wanted during college. And it was because the aura was sorority girl, party girl. And now she owns a company, very successful marketing agency, and receives these applications. And it's her 10 years ago. And it's so funny because someone's going to hire that person. It's not going to be a good fit. They're going to get let go. And that person's going to be like, I can't believe this has happened to me. But then 5 years later, they're going to realize why. And so I can't stress it enough. It's really important to let those people go and grow so they can add tremendous value to other companies in the economy as a whole. Fair summary?
Absolutely. It's a matter of letting them know that you're holding them back. But at the same time, you're basically saying that they are holding you back in your company because until you can find somebody that actually fills that position and they're a perfect fit, you're being held back. Yep. And the moment you can think about it that way as well, because, the hardest part, I have somebody working, like say in my clinics, I always was worried about, unemployment and, increasing the unemployment rate. And, to me, it was actually, I had to eventually get over that mind block and go, it's okay. Like if somebody gets unemployment and they end up giving it to them or whatever, that shouldn't be something that holds you back from filling that position with somebody who's going to reach their full potential.
Yeah, I like that. So we've talked a lot about theory and even some tactics, but one of the reasons I was motivated to have you on about this particular topic is that we do have a conference coming up and a little secret project no one knows about quite yet, but I'm about to announce very shortly. That is a lot of work. There's a lot of correspondence. There are a lot of email templates. I need headshots and bios, and this is the panel you're speaking on and all those types of things. And I know you've had to go through that, and not a lot of people have. How specifically is this happening behind the scenes? What was your level of involvement of things like creating those email templates so you can get all the speakers on board so they can input the information to Google Form? Just walk us through that because I want to learn, but also I'm sure that other people that are listening, they want to know the practical nature of how this is implemented.
Sure. Well, I would say the majority of that is delegated to Stacy, as you know, who is on my team that manages that process. And I also have Melissa, who is our director of marketing and PR. And they both are primarily working with that right now. The very first event that we did, I wrote all of those myself. And I did the majority of that myself, but Stacy did help with that piece too. But a lot of it gets written originally by me. And then, once you have your team that works with you long enough, they can start to write things that are similar to the way you would write. And most of the stuff that's written, they'll send to me to review and put my, approval on it first. But it's usually small tweaks and small changes that I have to put on it. But I try to give my team a lot of flexibility and a lot of freedom and a lot of leeway to be able to do things the way that they feel is best. Because I want to empower them to be able to make those types of changes and make those types of decisions. And, most of the time they make me look better, right? Instead of me just trying to always do it the way I want to do it. And unless it's something that is like a hard and fast, thing that I've learned. I'll give you a quick example. Yesterday, somebody had created an ad for me on a graphic, and it was in all caps, right? Well, I hate all caps, and I think all caps is terrible in an ad because it's actually hard to read when you write anything in all caps. And so that's one thing that I would definitely change. But guess what? They now know that person now knows that he's doing that. And so they'll never do it again because they know that that's how I think and that's how I work. And so the more that they interact with you, and one of the things I did earlier on is when I started to train, I would actually have them, instead of just them coming to me and saying, hey, what do you think about this? I would say, well, instead of me telling you what I think about it, why don't you go back and think about it and come back to me with 3 reasons why you think, what of 3 answers you think I'm going to give you, and then tell me which answer you think I'm going to give you. And then if you're right, great, then we don't have anything else to talk about. But if you're not right, I'm going to tell you why you're not right. And then I'm going to tell you why I would choose a different option. And then as you move forward, the next decision that has to happen, you're going to start to learn how I actually think.
Man, I was kind of chuckling because I've dealt with that, right? And by the way, the thing that's challenging as an entrepreneur, if you start to answer those questions, it ain't going to be the last time. It's going to be an ongoing thing. That's going to be the nature of your relationship. So the way to counter that is to do what Dan just outlined, to say, hey, here's the project, do it, and let me know when you're done. Now, if you do it incorrectly, I'm going to let you know so that you don't do it again. But what isn't going to happen is I say, do this project, and you come back to me and go, now there's a couple different ways I could do this project. Which one would you do it if you were me? And I go, well, I'm not you. I've got other things to do. So please do the project and let me know. And that's the only way you can actually get accurate growth at a reasonable level of efficiency. So it's a pretty funny story, but I like the way you did that. Okay. So very cool. We've covered everything from the identification process to the lead generation for jobs to onboarding to templates and managing to transparency and then also firing. And I really like all this. Any kind of resources that come to mind? You mentioned several apps and softwares I'm sure people will be appreciative of. Any books or something like that comes to mind regarding onboarding or outsourcing, hiring, firing? Or was this something that you had to do pretty much on your own?
I mean, I have read a few books over the years on this kind of topic of hiring and things like that, but nothing that really sticks out to me as a resource specifically to what we're talking about. Most of it has been a process of getting in and just doing that trial and error piece of it. And I mean, I feel like with the level of knowledge that I have right now, and you probably do too, Hunter, I could probably write the book on it, right? Yep. And there's a lot of things that have happened over the years, and a lot of things that we learn, and I think it's one of those things where you just have to start to do it. We hear some people talking about the law of the first deal when it comes to investing in real estate, right? And once you get your first deal, the next one's even easier. Well, it works in more than just real estate, right? Once you make your first hire, whether it be a virtual assistant or somebody working in your office, the next one gets a lot easier. So you just have to kind of take that plunge and just hire that next person. And I can guarantee you that when you hire that person and they're the right fit, you will not regret it.
Yep, really like that. That's why I suggest at the very beginning of this to hire an assistant. Look, understanding how to hire, create team members is by far the most lucrative skill in entrepreneurship if you focus on it. So really like that there. Dan, I would love for you to let listeners know about the upcoming conference, which, by the way, you were kind enough to allow me to speak on, which I'm very grateful for, and also your podcast and your company as a whole.
Sure. So the summit is actually called the Multifamily Investor Nation Summit. So those of you who are interested, you can go to mfinsummit.com and find out more information there. Hunter's going to be speaking at the event, and a lot of other speakers. I think we have probably like another 35 or 40 speakers coming up in January, and you can feel free to go there and check it out. You can also, we do weekly webinars every single week. You can go to multifamilyinvestornation.com, sign up for our weekly email list, be notified of those weekly webinars on lots of different topics around multifamily. And then, of course, we do have the #1 multifamily podcast on iTunes. So if you type in the word multifamily, we will come up as the #1 podcast called Multifamily Investor Nation on iTunes. So would love to have you join us on that. And of course, for those of you who are interested in potentially investing with us, you can certainly visit us at passiveinvesting.com. And we'd love to further that conversation with you as well.
Thanks a lot, Dan. Really appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you so much, Hunter.
Let me ask you something. Are you sitting with a big chunk of cash in your bank account right now, staring at you, you're staring at it, and it's that awkward silence where you don't know what to do? Well, a lot of people are. And the reason that they're doing that is that there's a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace right now. And that uncertainty has put a pause on a lot of people's actions. So to get to the bottom of what's going on in the marketplace, we created a free webinar where I had 3 elite, savvy, sophisticated real estate entrepreneurs come as panelists to answer the question of should we be investing in real estate deals right now. You can get access to that webinar for free at cfcmentorshipprogram.com/doing deals.